Welcome to this brief screencast on E25 Fix Bad JavaScript. This experience is an untimed experience. We're just going to try to get comfortable with removing errors found by ESLint. So the first step is to create a IntelliJ project called Bad JavaScript. New project. Get that in the right place. Bad JavaScript. And I'm just going to do a empty project. Just a base empty project. Don't need anything in it because we're going to put all the stuff in it as we go along. So I create. And then I want to set up for the coding standards. So I want to go to Preferences. And then I want to go to Editor, Inspections. For the JavaScript inspections, I want none of them. So I want to turn them all off. But I do want to turn on my code quality, my ESLint. So I'm going to turn it on. And instead of warning, I'm going to make it an error so that it really pops out. So I got my inspections done. Then I want to go down to Java, or languages and frameworks. JavaScript, I want to be using ECMAScript 6+ because that's what we're using. And then I want to go down here and say Code Quality Tools. And ESLint, I want an automatic configuration. So it's going to find the ESLint RC file. And then it also is going to do JavaScript files, TypeScript files, React JavaScript, and React TypeScript files, also HTML and Vue files. Okay. But now I need to get the definitions for my ESLint RC. So I want to copy this. I can open it up, copy it, and create a file. Or I personally like to just right mouse click and then save link as. And then we got that, it's not in downloads. It wants to go where I put that, which is my root directory, idea projects, bad JavaScript. So it wants to go in there. So I save it. And then I want to get the package.json, which defines some npm packages that we're going to be using, mostly ESLint. Save link as. It's going into the bad JavaScript, so that's good. And then I want the sample git ignore. Even though this isn't a Git project, we're going to supply a sample git ignore that will ignore certain files that you don't want to share on GitHub. And I'll talk about that briefly. So I want to save link as, save. So now I want to go look at my project, open it up. I've got my .idea directory where all my IntelliJ stuff is. I've got my IML file that defines the project. I got my sample ESLint RC.js file, but I want to call that, I want to rename it, so I just do shift function F6 or rename, and I want to rename it .ESLint RC.js. When I do that, notice that the little icon changes so it understands that it's an ESLint file or configuration file. The sample git ignore, I want to rename that, get rid of the sample. So it's just git ignore. Refactor. And we'll take a look at what files we're not interested in pushing up to GitHub if this were a GitHub repository. We don't need the IML file, any IML files. We don't need the bad JavaScript IML because it's got specific path information that if you're running it on a Mac machine or a Windows machine or you're on a team, those paths won't be the same for everybody. The DS store is a specific directory that Macintosh uses, so we don't need to store that. And the node modules directory is also something we don't want to store because it's got a lot of binary stuff. The package.json file is the one that will allow us to create that directory. So let's rename the sample package.json, and we want to just get rid of the sample dot part. Okay, so now we have a package.json. The package.json says we have our sample, version number, a description. We're getting ESLint, we're getting the config RMB, and we're getting a plugin. And then we have some scripts that are defined so we can run npm lint, which will lint our JS files. And then lint fix, which allows us to actually use ESLint's fix feature that can fix some errors automatically. It's a fairly nice feature, depending on if you want to do it for yourself. But often I don't run the fix, I just run the lint and I manually fix the problems myself. So once we have that, we need to invoke npm install to install ESLint, and I like to do that in IntelliJ. I open up my terminal and then run npm install. And again, notice the green, that's indicating that you can get npm to run, or excuse me, IntelliJ IDEA will run it for you. I actually like to do it from the command line. So we're going to get our packages from the internet, and we got it, and there are no vulnerabilities. That's great. So now we've got it installed, and note we have a node modules directory now that holds a whole bunch of stuff for the npm packages that we need. We're not going to publish those on GitHub at all. There's no reason to. The package tells us what we're going to install, so that's all we need. So now let's create a bad javascript.js. So we can do new, we can do file, we can do JavaScript, add JavaScript. I can type .js, but since it's a JavaScript file, it'll automatically give me the extension for me. I then want to copy the contents, copy that, and let's paste it. And then in my situation, I do not have node on my path because I'm using a tool called npm that allows me to switch node versions. So I just need to configure the node path. Again, didn't find it in the path variable because I'm using another tool, but I'm actually using version 17.5. And then it's happy. And then we run, and we can see, I think if it S, I have 28 errors and 1 typo. So all the red squigglies are my errors from ESLint. One nice thing to do, or one keystroke, shortcuts keystroke you can use, is if you do F2 or function F2, you can go to the next arrow, or next error. That is an amazing keystroke or shortcut that you want to sort of memorize. You don't have to memorize it, but it just makes life so much easier. You just do function F2 or F2 on a PC, and it will take you to the next error. So this error is that we're using var. We don't want to use var, and the ESLint rule is no var. So we can go to Chrome. I don't need all these. What are these things? Extra, I don't. And I can say ESLint no var. And it jumps to here. I can see the actual rule. I can see examples, and I can see why not to use it and all sorts of reasonings. So we're not supposed to use var anymore. We're supposed to use let or const. So is foo changed down here? So let's, by default, just guess that it might be changed. And so that takes care of one error. The next error says foo is never reassigned. So we can change that to const, because it checks the whole file. So that's nice. I mean, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to scan the file for foo. And then I find out no unused vars. So foo isn't even, it's initialized but never used. So how do we fix that? Since it's never used, we just delete it. And then I can go F2. Must use single quotes, so that's the guidance for ESLint. We should use single quotes in JavaScript. Note that IntelliJ has this nice little fix quotes thing, so if it knows how to fix it, IntelliJ will give you a suggestion, and you just click it, and it fixes the problem automatically. I love that feature of IntelliJ. Go to the next one. We can use object shorthand, so let's go back to rules. Object. I can't. So we should use object shorthand. So when we got these duplicates, the best way to do it is get rid of the duplicates. So just use X, Y, and Z, not X is X, Y is Y, and Z is Z. So, again, there is a fix, or we can just actually go in and manually do the fix. What's the next one? We don't need the quotes, so we can just remove the quotes. Then the next one, we got string concatenation. We prefer a template. So again, we can say and so we can use a template string, which is much nicer than a concatenation. You should definitely learn how to use template strings. It is a much better way of doing things. And again, IntelliJ or Ideas giving us a preferred template. And so we still have this plus. And now we've got some white space that we don't need. And then we have, what's this? Remove the escape character, so we don't need that. Then we have, oh, and I'm missing a trailing comma. ESLint likes to have commas after all the objects if the closing object is on a different line. If we do something like this, that is okay, but then they don't want this, they want it on their own line. So they want it on its own new line, which then is going to require that we have our comma. F2. We can use dot notation. We can take a look at the dot notation, but that's simply using dot char. Next one, we want to use the literal notation instead of a new array. So we want to, next one, F2, missing space. And then we have no extra semi. Function zob. Return value at the function zob. So notice we have if params is 4, we return this foob, but we don't have a return after that. So if it's not equal to 4, then we don't return something. So they want us to return, have a return statement. And let's just do foob plus 3. Then we have an assignment function. We don't want to reassign parameters. We're getting a parameter from somewhere. Why are we changing it? So we just want to get rid of that. Then we have the is never reassigned, so we want a constant. Then we want some spaces. Around our operators. And then F2, we want to use the equal so that we're testing the value and its type versus just its value. We generally, almost always want to use equal when we're doing comparisons for equality, because it also checks the type of the value. Then we don't have any issues, so now I can do my F2. Useless constructor, we don't need a constructor, so bye-bye. We got a get name, that's fine. And now we have a get name duplicate. Oh, we expected a blank line. Oh, we've got indentation, so get rid of those spaces. Now get name is, what's it saying? Duplicate, so we don't need it. Got rid of that. And now our last error. Expected a line break. Boom. And then we have, what's this? Expecting a line break, I bet. Boom. And then, what's this error? What we know, we need our comma. Save. And one error. Where's my one error? It's not there. So I don't, if I hit F2, I don't have any errors. We're good to go. Oh, and they don't know how to spell foob, so there's a typo. So I hope that you get a chance to do this, practice and trust ESLint. Read the documentation, because you can learn so much. I've learned so much about JavaScript by reading the ESLint rules and what the best way of doing, when to use it, when not to use it. ESLint is a very powerful tool, and now we can also run npm run lint to check to see if my code has any lint errors. And there are no lint errors. Excellent. So not only does the IntelliJ ESLint plugin work, but ESLint is also running when it runs just on the code, it's indicating that there are no errors. So that's what you want to have happen. That's what you want to do. And I hope you practice this. I hope you get comfortable with using IntelliJ and ESLint to check to see that your code passes lint. Thank you very much.